Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Perez Art Museum, Miami. My name is Lorie Ofir, and I'm the Director of Education. Tonight, we are presenting the online version of our Local Views at PAMM program featuring artist Lorie Ofir. This live virtual Local Views program is presented with the generous support of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and features Miami-based artists sharing their practice and discussing works of art on view at the museum that connect in various ways to their own work. This program aims to provide a firsthand interaction with local artists centered on their creative process. This casual 30-minute conversation takes place every Thursday online at 6 p.m. via Facebook Live and YouTube Live. I would like to send a sincere and heartfelt thank you to everyone joining us tonight in this digital space. As a 21st century museum dedicated to representing the diverse, multicultural communities of South Florida, tonight's program is a reflection of the local talent and dedication of the many artists that work with the museum. Lorie Ofir creates not only compelling and inspiring work via her studio practice, but shares her enthusiasm and knowledge as a highly skilled educator in the creation and facilitation of programs for our Miami communities. Before I introduce Lorie, I would like to acknowledge and thank the incredible team of people that work so very hard to make these programs come together online. Big thank yous to Anita Bram, Associate Director of Adult Programs and Audience Engagement, Darwin Rodriguez, teaching artist, supporting us with social media tonight, and our world-class AV team, Denise Faxis and Andrew Bird. This program could not happen without your contributions, so thank you all. Let's get started. Lorie Ofir lives and works in Miami, Florida. Her art practice explores the interconnections between human nature and the nature around us. Through expansive landscapes that defy horizon lines, these internal spaces imitate the flow of an ocean, the weight or lightness of clouds, the slow steadiness of sand dunes, peaks of mountains, and serve as a backdrop for life stages, conception, birth, sleep, and death. A current aspect of her practice is also influenced by parenthood and includes prenatal figure sculptures as well as sketchbook collaborations with her toddler. As a teaching artist at PAMM, the galleries are her classroom. Through inquiry-led tours, she enables youth to have a personalized experience with contemporary art as a catalyst for supporting and stimulating curiosity, empathy, and analytical thinking. Her youngest students are those in the monthly Baby and Me tours, and her most rewarding experience teaching is through her mentorship with the PAMM Teen Arts Council. Lorie earned her BFA at the University of Florida and Florence University of the Arts. She holds a special education certificate from the University of Central Florida and has participated in artist residencies in Colorado, New York, and locally at the Deering Estate. As you watch along this evening on Facebook or YouTube Live, please post questions for Lorie. She will try to answer as many as possible in the Q&A portion of this evening's presentation. And remember, if you value this and other programs presented by the museum, please consider supporting us by going to pam.org/donate. So with that being said, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lorie Ofir.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm honored to be here with all of you tonight at Local Views. I want to thank the great people at PAMM, Anita Bram, for envisioning a virtual space where Local Views can continue and feature the very artists that have devoted their mission to education at PAMM. Fearless leader Marie Bickles, the amazing Denise Faxis and Andrew Bird, who have expanded the virtual walls at PAMM, Darwin for helping out tonight, a fellow teaching artist, and actually I want to thank all the teaching artists that I've worked alongside for the past 5 years because each and every one of them have contributed to my practice in a beautiful way, and it's just a nice community that we have going. I also want to shout out the PAMM Teen Arts Council. They are the young and very cool and very relevant voices of the museum that I used to mentor. So I appreciate all of you, and I'm honored to have everyone here today. Thank you so much. So I hope you're all safe at home with your loved ones. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that although you've chosen to be here, there are relevant voices to consume on social media right now. There are difficult conversations to be had, and our change is coming. It's taken too long, and I acknowledge that. I don't consider my work political. I consider it personal. But in reality, the personal is political. I'm coming to realize that now. And there's a Maya Angelou quote that's kind of taken me through the past 2 years of my life, through the own happenings in my life. It's do the best until you know better. When you know better, do better. So may we all know better. May we all do better. I'm here coming to you from my kitchen studio. I work from here in my kitchen in Miami, and make the best of my space that I have here. And during quarantine, I've been in sort of a creative recovery, returning back to personal practice that took went on the back burner for a little while. I have an almost 3-year-old daughter. That's Sophie. Those are her dirty hands. And I constantly create with her. And being a mother has taught me a lot about being an artist. So I figured I would start this conversation with her here. The first thing it's taught me, some of the best artworks cannot be created alone. So we ask for help when we need to, and we work, we create together. The second thing, sometimes you can be a vehicle for creation. And I think at its best, an idea can flow through you, right? As much as an artist needs to have a studio discipline, some of the best ideas can happen through us, and creations can happen through us. The third thing she has taught me, my wise teacher, Sophie, it doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be finished. Just color if you want to color. And the fourth thing she has taught me is do it every day. Do something creative every day. As we get older, we call it like a discipline, but at her age, it's not a discipline. It's a natural inclination. So she's teaching me how to make it a natural inclination again. My current works. So these works are, the simplest way that I can put this is that my paintings explore the interconnections between human nature and the nature that surrounds us. I work mostly in oils and collage work, and I attempt to fuse the elsewhere, a place, with an object that is, in my mind, in the most intimately experienced object that I can imagine, which is our beds. So these internal landscapes, they defy horizon lines. In fact, I've shown them in many different directions. In the middle of shows, I've kind of snuck up on the walls of my work and rotated them myself. And the direction changes a piece a lot for me, because if we think about the most basic element of a landscape is this horizon line. But what happens when this horizon line becomes a vertical line, a vertical horizon even, it changes it. It makes it more of it gives it more of like a inside, that you're peeking into an inside, an internal landscape. So, and this is, all of these landscapes reference specific places, although they're not direct references to them. So this is the Great Colorado Sand Dunes. And they again, they're alluding to many different places, but in my mind, it's one specific place. Actually, while I was driving through on my way to these sand dunes, there were forest fires all around the areas, and the sky was the sky was on fire. So these kind of like visual hints to how I was feeling in this place. The sky wasn't physically red, but it felt on fire. So, and like many other artists, I created a lot as a kid. I had a desk in my room that I was just absolutely obsessed with. I think I can maybe consider it my first dedicated artwork space. But the first time I ever really felt like I'm an artist, I want to be an artist, was in high school. And I think a lot about the students that I used to mentor in PTAC, what is happening for them in their creative minds right now, because it all started for me in high school. Mrs. Cohen's class, Melanie Cohen, if you're watching, I'm here, shout out. But it all started in her class. I actually still hold on to, I brought it with me here today, this paintbrush that I lifted from her class as a kid that I still use, and I've probably used it in all of my paintings since then. So sorry, I stole your paintbrush. But she recommended that I attend a pre-college intensive at Parsons, and that early immersion into studio life and working many hours at a time in the studio led to studying painting and education at UF, at the University of Florida, studying in Italy, and all of the experiences that led me to here and now. The subject of a bed was always an interest to me. I think as a young artist, you're trying to make your work personal really fast. And this was where I went during my years at the University of Florida. It's the most personal space I can think of. It's an interior, but it's also a still life in a way that it can symbolically, the objects can symbolically tell a story. Someone's bed can be a portrait of them, how they leave it, how their body imprints the surface of a bed. So I found a lot of ways that I can express this idea of the bed. And I got really excited about these bed paintings. Actually, while I was studying abroad in Italy, in Florence, and studying Renaissance art, I found that I had very little interest in the history of the art, and I was very interested in the modeling, the draping, the folds, the way they surrounded a figure, and they would, cover the figure, but they would also enhance the figure in a very beautiful way. So let's see. Let's try next one. So during this time, or maybe a little after these bed paintings, I was also really interested in this all over composition, a field composition, where I would treat the entire canvas in the same way, using pretty simple imagery around me. So like curtains, or in this case, curtains. Or any veil of anything, and elevating this simple object by isolating it, by playing with the light around it, by patterning it in a way and zooming in on it, almost making it a little abstract and patterned. I developed a set of symbols that I organized into series. So this was the first piece from a series that I titled Layers and Veils. This idea of hiding behind something, feeling protected by something, maybe feeling a little separate from the outside world. So that was part of that series. I was almost focusing on like a secret life behind objects, like what they do, what they represent to us, but really making it in a very abstract way. And multiplying them to give them that new meaning. This series, again, that same all over field composition, is called Clouded and Clear. I painted a lot of these bubble sort of paintings. Actually, these objects are 17th century thermometers that I found in the amazing science museum in Florence. That's where the reference image comes from. But I transformed them into these delicate, fragile fragile shapes that look like raindrops, that feel like they have lightness, that they have fragility. And playing with this idea of clarity. You can see the clarity of this glass object, and then fog or murkiness behind it. So then we can move on to, and again, displaying these in different ways. Really, I've always just wanted to. I think I learned this early on in high school. My high school teacher, Mrs. Cohen, said whenever we were looking at the balance of a composition, flip it upside down. And that kind of stayed with me. And I've always wanted to see my work from many different rotations. Let's give them that balanced feel. So in 2009, after I graduated from the University of Florida, that was the year, I think the last year of the recession, I felt sort of unprimed for life, felt absolutely without direction. I moved back home. I got a job at a museum coffee shop, a museum in Fort Lauderdale. I saved every penny that I earned, and a friend and I just got in her car and rode out west, like this quintessential road trip out west. And this experience was a pivotal moment for me. We spent about 4 months just living out of a tent, out of our car, cooking over a fire, just living really simply. We drive through cities, but we'd mainly stay in like state parks and national parks. And it was an immersive experience. It was a totally introspective experience. And it was the first time that I actually felt a connection to land itself. I think in artistic terms, we think of a figure and a landscape, and we think of these things separately, and then we can put them together in a composition or in a painting. But I was almost thinking about the oneness of both, how one can evolve into another or be the same thing at the same time. So this piece, Stars and Sleep, was really born from the road. Actually, it was born the first time I slept in an actual bed in a very long time, once I returned back from my trip. In this most personal, comfortable space. And I remember just waking up in the morning, the first day, so to speak, like back in reality, or not this travel mode or this simple living mode anymore. And looking up and seeing the very same landscape that I had seen a month ago while I was in New Mexico. So this landscape references the White Sands National Monument in New Mexico, which is, I think, almost 300 square miles of white gypsum sand. It's like the softest sand dunes, feeling like baby powder. And I felt like I had made a connection between that place and then the place that I was in right then and there, which was my bed. So this started to get me thinking about this connection between human nature and nature herself. This was I sort of asked myself in these series of paintings if each part of myself were a place, or each part of my upbringing were a place, what would that place look like? And I came up with this visual language where, if I'm a child, my landscape would be this tightrope line where ocean meets sky. And this is sort of alluding to, being a kid at the beach. And then adolescence, how does that change? How the concepts of our world shift in adolescence into maybe like the slow evolution of a sand dune in the desert, where sand dunes appear as if they're moving, but they're really moving very slowly. They're very still. Then if I, need to be older and wiser, maybe I would grow into a mountain range. I'd be still as stone, but I would still be imitating this movement of a wave, of a moving, or a flowing something, a flowing fabric. What would erratic weather mean? How would it change my direction? How would it lead me to a new experience. So in thinking about my experience with a landscape, and this is the like I said, all of my landscapes reference specific places from my childhood, from travels, from residencies, from my immediate surroundings, but just this idea of place. And here's a glimpse into my thought process. There's always a place, there's always a reflection of what was my physical state, what was my emotional state in that place, and then a sort of remodeling of that place with things that I touch, things that I can move until it becomes right to me. So in this case, things that have been cut and glued and pasted together. And this kind of painting is the evolution of that thought process. So the next visual language that I played with in these paintings is inversing a landscape, symmetry, asymmetry, thinking about a mirror image of a place. And I connect this to sort of our physiological act of seeing, in which we take in an object upside down and it's inverted into our brains. And I connect this with the act of feeling, with what happens when there's always a mirroring in ourselves when we're trying to take in a situation, we're trying to internalize something. So this piece is Valley of Fire in Nevada. This was during the sunset. And during the sunset, all of these colors were slowly evolving to be brighter and brighter. The strata, like the sandstone formations, started to look like flesh or skin, even in the actual colors of them, but in the textures of them. So always connecting this thing of how does my body, my physical body, my emotional body relate to this place. This painting, I call it the paradox between heaven and earth. So I painted this during the last year of my grandmother's life. It was a really difficult year, especially for my mother and my sisters and my family. And as I sat by her bed and I observed her bed sheets, I was amazed at how still and unmoving they were by her. They would only be freshened if someone else, flipped them up. But so long as it was only her in that bed, they were almost frozen. And this was my visual representation of that experience of that year. There's also this idea of, the land and sky, and what happens to a physical body when it's no longer physical, when it's only a spiritual body. This is just the same image, but inverted, flipped upward. So what is, how does our physical world down here relate to a world, a world, so to speak, up there? With all of these, I'm trying to synthesize place and memory, and myself in that. So the landscape in all of these becomes almost like a personal terrain rather than a geographical place. Like I couldn't tell you where this place was, except this was, New York on my grandmother's bed. We have questions. Okay, I'll come back to those questions. So yes, please, anyone ask, now that I have the stage, so ask any questions, and I will get to answering them in a few minutes or as they pop up. So I showed you before, a lot of these paintings start out as collages, but some of these collages just live on their own, and I call these hybrid landscapes because they're exactly that. There's these impossible overlaps of different places, objects, textures, silhouettes, and memory. There's another one. And this piece, this is I'm showing this piece sort of as a promise to myself to continue this series. This is a series of collages that I worked on during my residency at the Deering Estate. And the trees there are incredible. The light there's something magical about how the light filters through onto the banyan trees and these big, majestic, powerful tree trunks. And it almost, the light coming in on these trees almost felt religious when I was there. That's really the only way I could explain it. Almost felt like stained glass windows. And the small pathways between these trees felt like, you walk through and you're in this like narrow, like a portal. A trail can be a portal into somewhere, and it gets narrower and narrower, spider webs surround you. And this was my visual representation of that very hot summer experience. I know that also in Jewish mysticism, compares a human being to a tree. For one thing, we all come from a seed. We have a complex system of growth. We have the ability to bear fruit. And, even in the way we breathe, we're connected to trees. So I was just felt very connected to these amazing structures at the Deering Estate and the way the light played off of them. So I think it's a good time to look at some questions from everyone. Aser, hey. Okay, so Aser says, can you talk more about the 16th century glass-like objects in the fourth painting? How did you acquire them? So interesting. I did not acquire them. I sat on the floor of the museum and I sketched them and I took pictures of them. So they were more of I used them as reference images. They were these incredible, extremely fragile, here, maybe I'll jump back to that image so that we have a visual of what I'm talking about. Glass structures, and as you put liquid in them, and just like an old school thermometer, I know we don't use those thermometers anymore, but the liquid would sort of rise through the glass straw to show the temperature. And they came in all sorts of, they were a functional object, but they were designed in such a beautiful way. And I just found a lot of interest in that. So let's see. Alan asks, Lorie, your work is beautiful. Is there a reason you work mainly in oils? I just think oils are delicious. I just love them. I've played I work a lot on raw canvas. So I've played with inks and acrylics directly on the raw canvas, but I always come back to oils. And he also asks, let's see, what materials do you hope to work more with, if any, for the future work? That's a good question. My current work now, and I didn't show it today because I wasn't ready to show it to the public, but I do a lot of watercolors just because they're quicker, they're more momentary. I can be a little more spontaneous with them. They're a little more toddler friendly. So let's see. And for future work, I don't know. I'm open to more possibilities. I think it would be interesting if some of my internal landscapes became fabric sculptures. So maybe that could be a different medium to work with. Nicole, hey Nicole. How do you know when your work is finished? Oh, that's like the hardest question. It's never finished. There's that Leonardo da Vinci quote, a work is never finished, it's only abandoned. And I think I know some other artists struggle with this, but struggling with when a work is finished. It's usually finished when I curse at it, when I've overworked it and I don't like something I did. And then I'm like, shit. Oh, can I curse on here? So, okay. Would you consider your artistic practice therapeutical? Or if so, how do you bring awareness and voice to that aspect? That's a great question. I think The most therapeutic part of my practice is the like the preemptive work, the seeing something new or seeing something and feeling like I'm seeing it with new eyes for the first time, and then wanting to make art inspired by it. I think that's the most therapeutic work. I think sometimes working on a project can bring me a lot, like some anxiety, some stress, and then that's when I need to take a step back from it. And then you say, if so, how do you bring awareness and voice to that aspect? That's a wonderful question. Let me think about it. Okay, I'm gonna get back to that one. Okay, Aser, you want that painting? Cool. So, hey Jamie. Okay, so what's the most unique place or item from where you have gathered information or inspiration? I would have to say probably, and I'll jump back to the slide. I think the most incredible place that I've been would have to be White Sands National Monument in Colorado. It's a place that looks absolutely otherworldly. That's what this painting was inspired by, Stars in Sleep. It is the most magical place on earth. But also, actually, New Mexico as is, but Carlsbad Caverns and different caverns that I've been able to travel to. But I'm now in the stages of gathering inspiration from places that are in close proximity to me. Finding inspiration, here. Oh, there's more questions. Okay, let's see. Alex. Hi, Alex. Alex was talking me through helping me prepare for today's talk, giving me some advice. Thank you, Alex. How has education played a role in your practice? Education has been everything in my practice. I think that I always try and stay on both sides of the spectrum of education, the educator and the student, the one who learns. And, there's a lot more coming in. And I think that working with young people, whether or not they consider themselves artists, is just the most important way to continue seeing things with new eyes. So does that answer that? I can come back to that too. Jahira, thanks for coming. What's the scale of your watercolors, and how does scale play a part in your work process? So a lot of the paintings that I've shown today are large. They're some of them, the last slide I've shown here is about 10 feet wide and 5 feet high. The rest of them are probably 2 by 3 feet, 2 by 2 feet. And scale is important to me because these landscapes that I'm portraying are really expansive. So I've tried to make these pieces smaller, and I just don't get that. I just don't get that feeling from a smaller landscape. I like these really big. On the flip side, though, my watercolors are really small. They have this very different feeling to them, very personal. Just these almost like a diary entry. So I work with really big, really small, and not so much in the middle just yet, but I won't say any definitive. So maybe just yet, maybe in the future. Aser, how have you presented Sophie in your work, if you have? If she was a landscape, how would you imagine her? Aser, that's a really hard question. She's coming into my landscapes. Right now, we play a lot on just paper, and everything we make, I save it, and I think it will play a role really soon. I have just a big collection of her work, and I'd like to work on top of it, and I want her to come back into the work. I haven't figured out how to work with her in oil painting, so we're on to the watercolors. But for more of that, stay tuned. There'll be more of that coming. If she was a landscape, how would you imagine her? Oh, I would imagine her as a big, wide, open field. because she needs a lot of space. She needs a lot of running space. And she is just the most, I think children are, they're born such free spirits. And I think a big, wide open space represents a free spirit. Plus she loves to run in the fields and the grass. What do you do when you get writer's block? I procrastinate a lot. And then I am really good with deadlines, and I like to work. Like when I am working on a painting, I work late into the night. But writer's block, what do I do? I actually, if I get a creative block, I usually will go to writing. A lot of my sketchbooks have more writing in them than drawing of an idea. Even I'll describe in words and descriptive terms what I plan on painting or what I plan on sketching, which is kind of ironic, but I think I never have a shortage of words, but I sometimes have that creative block like any other artist. And with that writer's block, I think that comes back to the lessons that my child has taught me, which is just make something, just color, just do something. Eileen, my sister. Have you uncovered inspiration during this time in history? Yes, I'm looking up a lot right now. I'm looking at a lot of cloud formations and colors of sunset. And I think during this time, my refuge has just been to look up. Do you have any rituals, Jackie asks, while you're painting? And do you have anything else like that high school paintbrush? I do. I have a paintbrush from, I can't remember from Salvation Mountain, which is a man-made incredible place in the deserts of Southern California. And it's man-made, and it's the biggest sculpture in the world. It's a man-made mountain that's dedicated to God. Actually, it's called look it up. Google Salvation Mountain. It's amazing. I have other objects. I have like animal bones that I found in the desert. I have a collection of things, of feathers, of rocks, of things that I've picked up from these places. Last question. Let's see. Alex asks, how can we support you? Yes. Thank you, Alex. So you can support me. Wait, let me jump to how you can support me. So all of my works are available for purchase on my website, directly through my website, lorieofir.com. If you see something that's not available or you want something else, I am just a message away. On Facebook, you can find me under the name Lorie Ofir Paints. On Instagram, Lorie Stories, because it's a little more personal. So it's just got all my stories on there. And yes, that's really how you can support me. During this time as well, I've teamed up with two fellow teaching artists to create art sessions for a teen, which was sort of the brainchild of Sarah, a very talented Miami artist. And we co-teach these really interactive, exciting lessons online. So if you follow, I didn't include it here, but art sessions for a teen, if you find us on Facebook and Instagram, especially if you have young kids at home that are struggling with their idle time. I know that, maybe next school year, our museum may not be able to bring in as many students as it did last year, or maybe bring them in different ways. But this is a really good way to bring students in to create art together, still in an open social environment. What do you love about working with teens? Darwin says. I love everything about working with teens. I love feeling old near them and like feeling really antique near them. I just feel like I have this like access to new ideas. And, I think this group that that represents the museum. It's a group of 13 teenagers in the museum that essentially work for the museum, planning events and tours, and do really amazing things. And it's also like a mentorship program. And I feel like I'm mentoring them, but really they're mentoring me. They're bringing me back to just a really amazing, complicated, unclear time in life that I and back to the time where I realized I wanted to be an artist. So let's see if there are any other questions, any other exciting things that I want to share. I don't know. But that's it. This is my work. I look forward to continuing my work more from home. That's it for, okay, Marie says that's it for questions. Awesome. So, and again, you can find me on lorieofir.com. I will update it every time I've got something new to share. You can follow my stories on Facebook. And it was a pleasure sharing this space with all of you. I really appreciate all of your wonderful questions. And just for giving me this space to share with you my personal work. So thank you so much. And that's it. Goodbye. Good night.